Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, heroes and villains. I'm your host, Deshaun Fauntleroy. I know your time is precious, so we're going to get right into today's show. In today's show, we're going to be discussing fear. We're going to be discussing fear in all of its varieties. I'm going to share with you a couple of different definitions of fear. And out of that, by the end of this, you're going to have some affirmations that are based on fear to help you emotionally. We'll have a morning affirmation, a daytime affirmation, and an evening affirmation. But more importantly, with my group of athletes that I have coming on today, I want to give y'all, if you can, give them a round of applause right now, because they're going to be defining fear today with us. They're going to be sharing some of their fears. And there's going to be some people there's going to be a couple of individuals that's going to surprise you on today's episode in some of the things that they share and how they decided to open up with us. So I can definitely appreciate that. That is what I'm creating here, is an open forum to share your thoughts. These can be good thoughts, this can be bad thoughts, but it's definitely a safe space for the student athlete, for the teen athlete, for the middle school athlete, for the collegiate athlete, because we all have ups and downs. We all have to deal with our fears. And out of that, you have to understand emotional intelligence. Out of that, you have to understand social intelligence. So I'm telling you, stay tuned for a good show. Before we go further, I want to let y'all know that today's episode is brought to you by Millennium Edge Apparel. This is a new sporting apparel company out of the Bay Area. Check out millenniumedgeapparel.com. Peace and blessings, and stay tuned for today's episode. We're just going to cut right into it. So thank y'all for listening. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions, comments, statements, concerns, do not hesitate to reach out to me at Deshaun@sportsmastery.com. Welcome to this episode. All right, we're going to get started. James, I know you had some books to share. What's some of those books you want to share with some of our young readers out here in the world?
Motivation Manifesto by Brendan Bouchard, 50th Law by Robert Greene and 50 Cent. This is also a really good audio book. Really good. Audible. Get a free trial. You get 2 free books. And then this is Musashi, a Book of 5 Rings. It's a book that was written on strategy in 600 AD or 1600 AD. So the book's like 400 years old. It's about this samurai who was in life-ending duels for his entire life and never lost once. He died an old man in a cave. So it's a really good book. All 3 of them are awesome.
All right. Thank you, James. I appreciate you sharing that information.
Yep.
You know, I want to give Charles a shout out, man. Charles, his mom is busy tonight. They're getting a new modem. So he was like, I can't get on. I don't have internet. So I'm like, download the app on your phone and then just click on the link. And Charles figured that shit out. So that's something I can appreciate. And I didn't have to say it 2 or 3 times. He just got it right the first time. And, you know, you got to really appreciate people that can follow instructions and get it right the first time. Because if you'll do it here, I know you're doing it in the classroom. And if you're doing it in the classroom, you're going to do it on the field or in practice or on the diamond in the court. Could you agree with that, Gabe?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. What I want to ask y'all, Gabe, I'm going to start with you. And I'm just going to ask this to 2 or 3 of y'all. What comes first? Overcoming fear or having discipline?
I think the discipline comes first, because I feel like you gotta be disciplined if you're gonna overcome some kind of fear you have, because it'll definitely take some kind of training to overcome, because you're not just gonna walk in one day. You're not just gonna jump in the pool and be able to swim, you know?
I like that. Kel, let me ask you this. What comes first, overcoming fear or having discipline?
I was thinking the same thing. The discipline's pretty necessary for that, because I don't think you can just kind of face a fear completely on its own. You have to be prepared to face that fear.
Excellent. Jonah, and what I want to encourage y'all, and I heard this down the line in our last meeting. I know Gabe mentioned he was struggling with procrastination, and then you had 2 or 3 people kind of say the same answer. Don't do that here. this is for y'all to give authentic answers, and it's okay to disagree, or if you truly have a different perspective, that's what I want to hear. You know, so and this isn't a shot at anybody here today, or nobody in general. I just know all of y'all have your own unique perspective, and you all have your own unique voice, and your voice counts, your perspective counts. You know, so get over the fear of sharing your perspective. You know, so this last question is for you, Jonah. Mm-hmm. What comes first, in your opinion, overcoming fear or having discipline?
Well, in my opinion, honestly, I like how Gabe was talking about, you can't just jump in the pool, just expect to know how to swim. I think being disciplined is first, because without being disciplined, you really can't overcome your fear. Because if you're not disciplined, then you're not able to, you're not structured enough to do what you're supposed to do, I guess, and stuff like that. So honestly, I would say discipline first and fear second.
Yeah, there go Gabe. It was his brother last week in the background. Now it's the dog. Unmute your mic, Gabe.
Okay.
All right. We was just laughing. Last week it was Chris, and now it's the dog. But
yeah,
we'll be all right. I asked y'all that because it was a quick survey. All right, so we'll move on. We'll get around to that later. I'll have to figure that out, or we'll try it another time. Nevertheless, I'm gonna get on to the next share. So bear with me. Can you guys see the workbook?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gabe, I want you to go ahead and read that first section right there.
Okay, it says dealing with your fears. Fear keeps us focused on the past or worried about the future. If we can acknowledge our fear, we can realize that we are okay. Okay,
now go ahead and read that definition there.
Okay, it says fear, noun, fear, plural noun, and fears. An unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that somebody or something is dangerous, likely to cause pain or a threat. Drivers are threatening to quit their jobs in fear. Drivers are threatening to quit their jobs in fear after a cabbie's murder. 2. Synonyms: terror, fright, fearfulness, horror, alarm, panic, agitation, trepidation, dread, consternation, dismay, and distress.
Good. So that's going to be the basis of our conversation today, is talking about fear. Now you remember last week we were discussing superstar, spirit, and the soul. So in this next definition, I'm going to give y'all the superstar definition of fear. I'll go ahead and put your mics on mute, everybody, right now. So the superstar definition of fear is discomfort caused by the perception that something has the potential and or intent to distract from our life force. The greater the potential and or threat perceived as harmful to life, the more urgent and intense is the desire for avoidance. This is part 2. Recognize that the immediate need in dealing with fear is to face fear with all of your intelligence and sensory faculties, so that the decision or course of action can be made with wisdom. I'll say that one more time. Recognize that the immediate need in dealing with fear is to face fear with all of your intelligence and sensory faculties, so that the decision or course of action can be made with wisdom. Gabe, go ahead and unmute your mic. So when you hear that second definition of fear, what do you think of that?
I just think because, as you said, fear can be a really distracting force in your life. You gotta when you say face it with all of your intelligence, I think that just means you have to take all of the factors into account and make sure that is it worth being afraid, or is it worth overcoming it because you can find so many benefits to that?
Okay, that's a great answer. Charles, unmute your mic. Gabe, go ahead and mute yours. Charles, what's your number one fear right now?
Number one fear, probably doing good in school. Doing good in school and having good grades.
What does that mean, doing good in school? I don't, that's not telling me anything.
Like getting good grades.
What does getting good grades mean? That's still not telling me.
Like having A's and B's and being on top of things, doing homework. That's my fear right now.
Why do you have a fear of getting good grades? Like you don't have books, you can't read or something, or do you have all D's and F's right now?
No, I have pretty good grades right now. Like I guess just what I'm trying to say is like maintaining, and keep the good grades going, and keeping them.
Okay, what would stop you from that?
What would stop me? Probably, to be honest, probably like friends. I don't know, like maybe sports. Like and being lazy and not wanting to do it.
Okay, that's fair enough. I can accept that, Charles. You're in the ninth grade, and I think part of that goes back to what Gabe was illustrating earlier, where you have to use your intelligence and your wisdom to make the best course of action. Because oftentimes, what we do, you worried about the social stuff, how you gonna look with your friends, And Gabe, I know you've gone through this. You know what? I'm just gonna go home and study. Y'all can go party. You can go to the mall, go to play pool late at night on the weekend. But I know Gabe, he's going to go study because on a Friday night, Gabe knows that he has to get up early Saturday morning and go to training. Am I right, Gabe?
Yeah, you're right.
Jonah, unmute your mic.
All right, I did.
Yeah. What's your number one fear right now?
Honestly, my number one fear is probably my math grade in school, because normally I'm not really good in math, but I still try to, attempt to try. I still try doing it just because.
Now, when you say math, what math are you in? What are you referring to?
I'm currently in geometry right now, and honestly, I know last year I didn't want to ask for help because it'd make it seem like I'm getting my hand held all the time. But then it's this year, I'm just like, took a complete turn. I'm just like, you know what? I think I should really try doing math, because if I don't try now, then there's no other way when to start. So it's like, asking my teacher for help at that moment, not waiting till like a week after when we're about to have a test and stuff like that.
Let me ask you this. Do you have access to tutors at your school?
Yeah, I do have access. I was actually in a tutoring thing last year, and that helped me a lot. And I know this year, actually today, I went to my counselor when I got to school, and we had math homework, and I didn't really understand. Like, I got the homework done and stuff, and so I went to my counselor today, and I told her, I said, after football season, I want to get a tutor again, because I want to have my math grade up by the end of the first semester and by the end of my school year, and I want to be at least a B+. So
right, that's a good idea. I have a guy that y'all haven't met yet that I train. He's in the 8th grade, but he'll be transitioning in the Jesuit high school last year. And actually, I refer him to your mom, Charles. Where Jack has a math tutor. And Jack is a 4.0 student right now. So what I want to illustrate to y'all is that most 4.0 kids, they have tutors. Where sometimes us as athletes, we've been taught that for whatever reason that you're silly, dumb, stupid, or ignorant if you have a tutor. But most kids that get straight A's, it's because they have a tutor. And the tutor is like a coach. The tutor is like a personal trainer. So that's another thing that y'all that I would encourage y'all to take advantage of. Forget what, some silly friend or peer or classmate or teammate might say, because that's going to be the dumbass that's not contributing to society or that's not in a key position in a corporation 10 or 15 years down the line. So ultimately what I'm saying to y'all is if y'all get over your fears right now, you're actually making decisions now that's going to affect you 10, 15, 20 years down the line. And I know Gabe can attest to this because I know the types of conversations that he has with his father. So just think about that. The decisions that y'all are making right now is going to affect you next year. It'll affect you 5 years out. 10 years out, 15 years out. Everything counts right now, gentlemen. I'm telling you. Go ahead and mute it. Ronan, what is your biggest fear right now?
Right now, my biggest fear.
I need you to speak up just a little bit more, man. I like where you're at, but I need you a little more assertiveness and authoritativeness in your voice.
So right now, my biggest fear is just, for football, not being able to completely like overcome another injury and come back the way that I want to.
Okay. So why don't you expand on that a little bit further so you could let the group inside a little bit more. When you say injury, what does that mean? Where's this coming from? I know what you're talking about, but share that with everybody else.
All right. So what I mean is I broke my collarbone, and this is my third season-ending injury in a row. And I know going into my sophomore season, I thought I was going to be a lot better than I actually was. And I don't want that to happen again where I go into my junior season and I'm not playing because I didn't come back like I thought I was.
Okay, so what do you think we need to do in terms of facing this fear?
For that, I think, being consistent when it comes to showing up to the workouts and trainings, being consistent and getting the work done.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And Gabe will tell you, Gabe's had days with me where he's had 2-3 workouts, trained at Grant High School, then came back over to the gym. And for you, it's going to come down to the same thing, where it's like the higher you go or the higher you aspire, it's going to demand more of your time. And it might be, Mom, I don't want to go to the lake this weekend, or I don't want to go camping. And then y'all have to have that conversation. You're going to have to explain, give some reasoning why you should be left at home to get 4 or 5 workouts in on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So I would encourage you to keep going forward, because the more workouts you get in, that's how you're going to close the gap in terms of where you want to be, So I like that. I can appreciate that. Kel, tell us what's your biggest fear right now, Kel?
Probably not living up to my own potential that I know I have. For example, like my basketball season's coming up, and I know I can make the varsity team, but I'm afraid that there's a chance that I won't and that I'll still be on JV. And also in school, I know I have the potential to get all A's, but I'm still afraid of the possibility that I won't, that I could get B's or C's. And I think just not living up to the potential that I know I have.
Yeah, I like the specifics of that, of getting A's and not making varsity. Let me ask you this. What's going to happen if you don't make varsity?
I'm going to do everything I can to be a swing player and get moved up.
Yeah, that's what I would like to hear, because if you don't get it the first time, it doesn't mean it's out. What would be out if you just stopped and gave up and just settled for JV, so you can do it. It's up to you. It's the sacrifice of it all, and I'll tell you guys, Gabe has seen it, he's seen guys not make the sacrifice. He's seen guys consistently not put in work at the gym. So this leads us to Gabe. What's your biggest fear right now, Gabe?
I'm gonna be really honest with y'all. I just went into the doctor on Tuesday and found out that my wrist, the scaphoid bone in my wrist, is shattered, and they're still trying to figure out. I need a CAT scan and a MRI to figure out if my bone is still alive, and I'm really scared to. If it's dead, then it could alter my wrist for the rest of my life, and my sports career and fitness is what I love. And then if it is alive, I'm going to be out of commission for 6 to 8 months, and I have to skip the wrestling season when I think I could have definitely been first in state, and I'm just really struggling with that.
Yeah, I can certainly understand that. That's tough. I appreciate you sharing that, Gabe. I really do. I know that must have been really hard shit to get off of your chest, especially share with the group. But I can appreciate that, man. And that's what I'm talking about. Like that's a real fear right now. You had me shook up for a minute, like, like it might have to be amputated or something. So what did they say if like you finish out like the rest of the career on it? Is there some type of damage, or how long you've been working with the wrist?
So I don't know if you remember, but I actually hurt the wrist last season, and it's been sticking with me since. And I always thought it was ligament damage. And then he asked for another X-ray. So he doesn't necessarily want me to play, but this is my senior season, and it's like I've already been playing on it for the full season. So I'm gonna finish out as much as I can.
Right.
I think wrestling's off the table though, because wrestling season comes after I'll already get my surgery.
Well, you got to just heal. I commend you for finishing the season. And it's like you said, if you done came this far, Yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing that, Gabe.
Yeah, no problem.
What I'm going to do is we're going to scroll down. Charles, I want you to read this section right here where it starts with high achievers are willing to do what they fear.
Fear is the most powerfully inhibiting force known to man. It restricts us, tightens us, and causes us to panic, forcing us to abandon our great plans for life. If we are not willing to do what we fear, then fear not ourselves is in control of our lives. The high achiever cannot afford to surrender control to his or her life to fear.
Kel, I want you to read this next section where it says fear abounds.
All right. Psychologists tell us that fear is the most common emotion in our society today. There are 6 basic fears that most people have: fear of rejection or criticism, fear of ill health, fear of poverty, fear of old age, fear of loss of a loved one / being left alone, or fear of death, the foundation of all fear. Unfortunately, fear's power is amplified by fear itself. It works like this. The more you fear something, the more that fear intensifies, and the more paralyzing it becomes. In many ways, worry becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That which we fear tends to come upon us.
Okay, thank you. I want you to stop right there. Now, if you haven't had a chance, either sometime tonight or tomorrow, go listen to the recent podcast episode, because it's just our conversation has been repurposed from last week. And if all of y'all were here last week, that we discussed superstar, spirit, and soul. And if you're living from the inner self or from the spirit, there's really nothing to fear. And what I mean by that is when you look at fear of rejection or criticism, fear of ill health, fear of poverty, fear of old age, fear of loss of a loved one, your mom and dad, or being left alone, and fear of death. What they when I did the research, the foundation of all fear. And when you think about that, all these are social phenomenons. You have to get taught this stuff to fear it. Because at the end of the day, when you're born internally, you're only born with 2 fears. And that's the fear of heights and the fear of loud noises. Everything else is taught, if you think about it. And Gabe, you've been around, you have a younger brother. Jonah, you have a younger brother. If you can remember when he was 2 or 3, if you put him on something high and left him hanging, what's the first thing he's going to start doing?
Just start crying.
Exactly. So think about it. And then y'all have seen this in the movies. Let's just take this situation to the movies. You've all seen family dynamics in the movies or in person where there might be a misunderstanding. There could be, one parent shouting or both parents shouting for whatever reason. And it might not necessarily even be a fight, but if you have a little one around, soon as they hear those loud voices, what do they start doing?
Start crying.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. And those are facts. You're born with 2 internal fears, and that's fear of heights and fear of loud noises. Because if you think about it, Kids aren't scared of snakes until somebody tells them not to pick them up. Otherwise, they're going to go pick up that snake, and they're not worried about getting bitten. Am I right, Gabe?
Yeah, you're totally right.
So what I'm saying to y'all with some of the things that y'all have going on is you really have to take a step back. And as I said before, with your experience, with your knowledge and wisdom, when it comes to making decisions and not really worrying about your peers. You have loved ones that you can consult with. We're consulting together in this group. So make those decisions, and you don't have to fear, being talked about. This is what people are worried about: being talked about, being laughed at, being made a mockery of. And what do you hear? People are going through these days. They have anxiety. They're on depression. They're on meds. I would venture to say, if you guys keep yourself in this group, which I know y'all are, and we keep talking about these things, y'all have nothing to worry about. One of my biggest, I would hate to see any of you guys on, medications. Maybe if you are right now, I apologize about that. But I know if you are, it's not a problem with y'all talking right here, because people that are so-called on anxiety or depressed, they run from this group. They run from the training. And Gabe, you've seen it. Am I right?
Yeah, you're totally right.
Because I know you've talked to a number of kids at your school alone to get them over to our facility. But when you look at them videos, and when you first come in to the facility and you see the discipline, and the rigors of the program from start to finish, that runs people away.
Yeah,
not everybody can train with us. You've seen the conversations that I've had with you. You've seen the conversations that I've had with other people that come in the gym. So having discipline in your life is very good. Having the facilities and the faith to overcome fear is what we're talking about. And I think y'all can all do that based on the situation and dynamics that you're in. One thing I'll do is I'll highlight Ronan, because I talked to his mom after our last meeting. And one of the things that he walked away with from our last conversation was he came to the realization that everybody is working through something, and that something is big to them. So all of you guys, I can appreciate you recognizing that, Ronan. So he got a chance to realize that, damn, it's not just me. We're all working through something, and that's life. And that's the beauty of the program, is you get to share, your experiences and your perception of what you're going through. Your experience counts. Your perception counts. Your emotions or feelings at a particular time, or the way you might see a situation or circumstance, it counts. That's what this is about here. So we're going to go on. All right. Ronan, unmute your mic. So I want you to read. You'll start on the left, and then you'll go over to the right. We'll go back to the top right here, and then you'll go down. So I want you to start reading right there. Doubt, the twin brother of fear.
Our doubts are traitors and make us lose the good we oft might win, wrote Shakespeare in Measure for Measure. Doubt destroys faith in ourselves and in God. We lose all the power that faith can give to us when we allow doubt, the twin brother of fear, to overwhelm us. We live in an age that worships science. However, the very nature of science is such that it causes us to doubt anything that we cannot see, hear, smell,
taste, or touch. Right there.
Oh, taste or touch. Unfortunately, for many people, this creates the kind of doubt which says that nothing is valid unless it can be proven scientifically. We can be open both to scientific achievement and to realities that we cannot experience with our five senses. But when spiritual doubt takes hold of our lives, we become immobilized and cannot realize our potential. All high achievements require confidence, and the antithesis of doubt and fear. Fear is at work in most poor performances. It's time to learn how to recognize fear's various
guises.
guises. Understand the role you may be inadvertently playing in generating your fear, and take action to neutralize the performance disrupting effects of the fear. Fear is probably the single biggest cause of choking in sports. When you play not to lose, your fear makes you too careful. Worrying about the outcome further feeds your fears and makes you play tentatively. Performing tentatively will keep you stuck. Peak performance always comes out of a fearless, go for broke attitude. During such a performance, athletes don't think about the outcome. While winning may be critically important to them, it's just not relevant at the time. Peak performance requires athletes to go all out at all times.
Appreciate you reading that. Thank you. That was a good pitch. I could hear you fine, and I'm sure everybody else could. I want to talk about this doubt thing. There's been people that we've trained with and that's trained with us that have struggled at certain schools on certain teams, whether it be basketball in particular or football, to where they didn't get their way. So they quit at one school, transfer to another school, go out on the team for football, and then quit that sport when they're not getting their way. And then we're getting close to basketball season, and this individual loves basketball. And when they were at the first school, it's very tough because you're playing for a state contender. And when you're playing for like a number 1 ranked, number 2 ranked school, is going to be tough. As far as your skill level, your tryouts, you working out, having the strength and everything that comes with being a high level varsity high school basketball player. So when it's time to really compete, you have some people in the world that are going to consistently run and not deal with competition. But you'll see them same people playing a pickup game or playing on a youth league team or an AAU team, probably a level 2, doing a crossover against some bums. Oh, let me take that back. Not bums, maybe athletes that just aren't that good. That's not indicative of what they're going to be playing against at the highest level. See, it's different when you say you want to play at a high level, because from that point on, everything in your soul has to be about playing at a high level. How you handle yourself at school at a high level. How you complete your assignments and with consistency at a high level. How you practice every day at a high level. The energy that you bring to every single game at a high level. When you're engaging in conversations at school or in the community at a high level. Now, there's a time when you might go down to work on a weakness like your left hand or something like that. But when people do things like that, they don't put it on Instagram. They don't put it on Facebook. You see what I mean? We have people out there, and you've seen it, where they'll put the highlights on Facebook. But the flip side of that is, what about when you have a bad game? What about when you mess up? Why isn't that there? Why do we just share the good parts? So I know some of y'all have seen in the past, somebody puts up a snapshot, whether it's on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. What I need y'all to realize is that, and I think you should know this by now, is that that's all it is. It's like a mini highlight, because it's not everyday life. Not everyday life is a highlight. Not every day is Christmas. So don't buy into it. And what I want to encourage y'all to really do is, it's the difficult parts, the things that you perceive that are difficult. If you walk through them to the other side, once you get there, you'll realize that it's not that difficult. I want you to unmute your mic, Kel, and explain to us a scenario, that you may have overcame in the last year that may have appeared difficult, and you went through the circumstance or situation and realized that it was nothing that you thought it was.
I think you're referring to my baseball thing, right?
No, I'm not. I'm referring to whatever you want to explain to us.
Well, actually, yeah, thinking about school, I always have like loved math, and I've always been pretty good at math. And coming into Catlin Gable last year as a freshman in a new school, I was in a really good math class, but I ended up having to switch out of it because I had to rearrange my schedule. And I got placed in with a teacher who I just couldn't work right with, and she didn't teach my class well, and I was struggling. And I basically went from an A in the class to an F. And I think a lot asking for help from my parents and talking with them through that, I was able to like figure out that situation and and switch to a new teacher. And I ended up doing again well in the class. And I think there, I just really had to realize that I wasn't going to let this one thing hold me back and let this one thing ruin my favorite class that I've had for my entire school experience just because one teacher didn't really work well with me.
You weren't getting an F, it was a C.
Okay, well, my dad just said I wasn't getting an F, it was a C. But if you looked at my grades, I got like a 2 out of 20 on a test because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. And that doesn't sound like a C to me. I feel like she just raised my grade, so it wasn't like, oh, he's getting a 20% class.
That's fair enough. I like your objectivity in the matter, so thanks for contributing that.
Yeah.
Before we close out, I want to ask y'all some questions, and these are just rhetorical that I want y'all to think about. The first one is, how can you stop frustrating losses even after you've tried everything? Now, this could be from a performance game standpoint or sporting situation, or it could be just social situations. Again, how can you stop frustrating losses even after you tried everything? What can you do to consistently win big and when it counts the most? Is there a way to silence the critics that say you always choke in the big games? How come you did everything you could, prepared for months and months, and came up short when it mattered most? How do you approach your sport or game? In what ways do you approach your sport? So those are some things that I want y'all to think about. I have one more thing that I want to share with y'all before we close out. So we'll can y'all still see the workbook on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can see it too.
Okay. All right. So remember, if you were here last week where we were talking about superstar, the spirit and the soul, and some of the things that came out of that is affirm, pray, and meditate. So these are all some affirmations based on fear and to help you do that. So one is a morning affirmation. The second one is a daytime affirmation. And the third one is a bedtime affirmation. So with these, this isn't set in stone. You can adjust these to your fit, to your wording. I would encourage you to do so. Gabe, I want you to read that morning affirmation.
All right. It says, I make fear my I make fear my advisor so that I am totally aware while proceeding with faith and trust in my creator. Therefore, my fears must become cautious guides rather than limiters of my growth.
So if you can imagine that based on our prior conversation, one, I can say it to myself and then getting to the point where I can say it out loud. And then further, once you have this memorized, you can imagine just singing the words in your head. Again, when you get a chance, go to sportsmastery.com/113 and listen to what we discussed last week. What is a superstar? Ronan, I want you to read the daytime, the number 2, the daytime affirmation.
I choose only thoughts, attitudes, and feelings that move me toward my highest good, greatest joy, and peace of mind.
Jonah, I want you to read the bedtime affirmation.
Okay. Bedtime. I forgive all persons, situations, and circumstances that created discomfort in my life today. I rise above them, and most of all, I forgive myself.
I really like that one, or something like that at the end of the day, because you can have a screwed up day. Maybe you missed a game shot. Maybe somebody did something offhanded to you in school or was just, gave you a hard time. You know, maybe you didn't get the job, or maybe you didn't get accepted to a certain school. It could be anything, but getting to a point where you can go to bed peacefully. So what I want y'all to do is just send me an email tonight or first thing in the morning, and then I'll send y'all the PDF of this. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you that.
Okay. So yeah, just send me a personal email, you know, and I'll get it right out to each of y'all. Before we close out, we'll go one at a time, and we'll start with you, Charles. Do you have anything that you would like to share or say, you know, concerning your thoughts with this meeting on fear or doubt? So I can't hear you. Go ahead.
I said I don't right now. You can come back to me at the end. I might have something.
Okay, go ahead, Ronan. What are your thoughts on our meeting tonight? You know, discussing fear and some of the things that we've discussed.
I don't have too many thoughts on it, but I did think it was important and useful to talk about some of the stuff we did, as well as the affirmations that you just showed us.
Okay, go ahead, Jonah.
I mean, just talking about fear for me was a little bit helpful, because listening to other people talk about what their fear is kind of makes me feel like they're not afraid to, you know, talk about what they're afraid of or what they fear. And that's pretty much what I really have right now. But
Kel, what would you like to add before we close out? What was your biggest takeaway today?
I really liked this session. I think it was really good for me to say my biggest fear out loud, just so I could kind of take a step back and really see the situation it was, and know that it's not really that big of a deal, and that it's pretty possible for me to overcome.
Yeah, and to leave y'all with if there's anything that I want to leave y'all with, it's never as big as you think it is. It's never, the fear is never that big. It's just not once you go through it. It's nowhere near as worse as you might think. You know, I know your dad is there, Jay, hanging in the background. Jay, do you have any thoughts on our episode this evening? What's been a takeaway for you as a parent being involved, you know, in our class tonight?
Yeah, it's been really interesting, and I think it's a really important topic to discuss, because I think a lot of times, especially when we were younger, and we were talking about this the other night, we look at situations and we're fearful of them when we're younger, because we don't have the context to really understand that this isn't that big of a deal after all. You know, you kind of, like, for me growing up, my biggest fear was losing. The fear of losing was just so, like, overwhelming that it can actually kind of control your ability to play well or to perform well in the moment. And so you just have to look at fear, deal with it, and use it as a learning lesson. And your point about, you know, you asked the question, is something to the effect, is it more important to be prepared? I don't think it was prepared. What was the
which comes first, discipline or the ability to overcome fear?
Yeah, and there's not necessarily always an answer, because sometimes you're going to get into a situation where you are confronted by something that you don't have the time to be disciplined with that. And I understand that discipline really in your life allows you to kind of step back and try to look at different situations and apply it to a current moment. The one time that I remember most for Kel is he was about to enter a Taekwondo championship, and he was basically having a nervous breakdown. And I had to kind of work with him in that situation and just get him to understand that the moment wasn't that large, and to step back and just kind of find that place within you and recognize that, hey, you go in there, you lose, and all of a sudden, you know, it's not as big of a deal, and ultimately he ended up winning the entire tournament. So anyway, I think that you're right. It really is about preparation, and that will help you to the next cause, the next thing. But I think there are going to be times in everyone's life where you're not going to be prepared, and you're not going to have that ability in that moment to rely on anything other than that internal drive or
Spirit.
Exactly. Within yourself. So anyway, that's. Thanks for letting me talk.
Yeah, no, you hit on it. You hit on it right on, because, I literally thought of that like right before we got on, like which comes first, discipline or being able to overcome your fear, because I wanted to discuss both. And depending on what they said, I was just going to start with one or the other. Mm-hmm. We got to figure out that thing with sharing the screen and the audio, because it's worked before. It worked a couple of weeks ago where I was able to go inside of the app and play the video. But all of y'all's input, it's good and it counts. And y'all have to remember that as far as being authentic and really sharing your story. And Gabe, I can appreciate you sharing your story today, man. Did you have what was your takeaway today, Gabe?
I think what I learned is that some of my fears might be more irrational than I think they are, and then I need to look at them with more of an optimistic point of view instead of a pessimistic one. And I think that everybody can kind of learn from that being afraid of something isn't the end of the world, and you can always look at the bright side. Like I was thinking, like just going through it, like maybe it's not such a bad thing that I have to get surgery and I'll miss the season, because I'll have full functionality of my wrist after that. And depending on the circumstances, maybe I'll be able to finish out the season, and who knows, just looking at things in a more positive way.
Right. So once you have the surgery after football season, that'll put you out of commission for how long with your wrist?
They said 6 months at least, but who knows? Maybe that's just for the average Joe.
I appreciate y'all all coming on. I know you have a game tomorrow, Gabe. I know it's a big one. So you need to go handle that. I know it's kind of a rival game, so it's got to be done. The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the parent to work through together. The Sports Mastery Workbook was created for the student athlete and the coach to work through together. It was created in a sense and in a way to bridge the gap in communication between these parties and build a successful relationship dynamic. To learn more, visit sportsmastery.com/workbook or check out the show notes page and click on the link.